Picture this. Mercedes is absolutely crushing Formula 1. They're winning everything in sight. Their cars are faster than anyone else. And their engines are the gold standard of reliability. But behind all that success, trouble was quietly building. The cracks were already starting to show, but nobody saw the disaster coming. September 2015, Monza. Nico Rosberg shows up with Mercedes' shiny new Phase 4 engine. But then, disaster strikes during practice. A coolant leak damages the new unit, forcing him back to his old engine that had already done some races. With just 2 laps to go, the engine exploded, and Rosberg had to retire. He lost crucial points and called it the biggest loss I've had in one day in the whole season. But that was just the warm-up act. The real drama came a year later in Malaysia, 2016. Lewis Hamilton was cruising to victory, leading comfortably with just 15 laps to go. His championship fight with Rosberg was heating up, and this win would have been crucial. Then boom! His engine literally exploded in a cloud of smoke and steam. Hamilton was furious, and his post-race interview became legendary. "Someone doesn't want me to win this year." The conspiracy theories were flying, but the reality was even scarier. Mercedes' reliability was starting to crack under pressure. Fast forward to 2021, what started as isolated incidents had become a full-blown crisis. Remember when Mercedes engines were so reliable you could set your watch by them? Those days were officially over. Valtteri Bottas became the unlucky poster boy for Mercedes engine troubles. The poor guy needed 6 engines in 2021. Every other weekend, it seemed like Bottas was getting another grid penalty for taking fresh engine components. It wasn't just the factory team either. Williams' George Russell and Nicholas Latifi were getting penalties left and right too. Toto Wolff started using words you never want to hear from a team boss. Unusual noises, question marks, and the dreaded "we don't fully understand the problem yet." Mercedes had gone from engine kings to hanging on for dear life, trying to supply engines to 4 different teams while their own units were falling faster than they could build new ones. The engine freeze was coming in 2022, which meant they had to solve these problems fast or be stuck with unreliable engines for years. By 2022, things got even weirder. Mercedes was making precautionary engine changes, basically swapping out engines before they failed, just in case. That's like changing your shoes every few steps because you're worried they might fall apart. Not exactly confidence-inspiring. You would think, after years of problems, Mercedes would have figured things out by 2024. You would be wrong. Lewis Hamilton, in what everyone knew would be his final season with Mercedes, couldn't escape the engine curse either. Australia 2024 should have been a fresh start. Instead, it became another chapter in Mercedes' reliability horror story.
Yeah, I've had an engine failure.
Oh, okay.
Engine failure.
Hamilton out of the race.
Hamilton was running well in the early stages when suddenly his engine just shut down. No warning, no gradual loss of power, just lights out, game over. The car had to be retired on the spot, and Hamilton watched helplessly as his rival scored points while he got 0. The worst part? When Mercedes flew the engine back to their Brixworth facility for analysis, they discovered it was completely toast. A bottom-end failure traced to what they diplomatically called a quality process issue. Translation: someone messed up during manufacturing. This wasn't wear and tear or bad luck. This was a brand new engine that failed because of a mistake in the factory. Losing an engine that early in the season is a nightmare for any driver. But for Hamilton in his final Mercedes year, it was especially cruel. With only 4 engines allowed per season, he was now facing the very real possibility of grid penalties later in the championship. The reliability problems that had been haunting Mercedes for years were now personally haunting their greatest driver. So here we are in 2025, and guess what? The problems haven't gone away. If anything, they found new victims. Poor Kimi Antonelli, the rookie who was supposed to be Mercedes' future, has been getting a masterclass in frustration. His first home race at Imola ended in disaster. The rookie was running in the points when his Mercedes suddenly lost throttle control on lap 46. Smoke poured from the car as it rolled to a stop, triggering a safety car that ruined leader Max Verstappen's huge lead. Mercedes later found the problem was caused by a small part in the throttle system that stopped working. a tiny issue that created big drama. 2 weeks later in Monaco, George Russell's weekend went up in smoke before it even started. During Q2, his car hit a bump on the straight and the engine completely shut off. Stranded in the tunnel, Russell fumed. The whole engine switched off. Now our chance is gone. Teammate Antonelli compounded the misery by crashing in Q1, leaving both Mercedes cars near the back. Just when things seemed to stabilize, Spain delivered another blow. Antonelli, now desperate for points, suffered a power unit failure on lap 55. Mercedes' James Ellison tried staying positive. "We're still within engine limits," but his tense body language said otherwise. It's not just the factory team suffering. Williams locked into Mercedes engines until 2026 has seen Alex Albon retire twice with hybrid system failures. Even McLaren, who extended their Mercedes deal until 2030, had Lando Norris lose a podium in Bahrain where his energy recovery system overheated. The pattern is clear. Mercedes' reliability crisis is now a full-blown epidemic. The really scary part? These aren't isolated incidents anymore. From Imola's throttle sensors to Monaco's bump-induced blackouts, Mercedes engines are falling in ways nobody predicted. As Toto Wolff confessed, "We are fighting ghosts in these machines." But Mercedes engine problems don't just happen in Formula 1. Their road cars have had big troubles too. In 2010, Mercedes made a new diesel engine that was supposed to be better for the environment, but it turned into a disaster. The fuel injectors broke in about 50,000 cars, so people got stuck or could only drive really slowly. Then in 2023, Mercedes had to recall 300,000 SUVs because water got into the fuel pumps and made the engine stop while driving. These problems show that Mercedes engine issues are not just about racing. They also affect normal cars that people use every day. Whether it's on the racetrack or on the road, Mercedes has a lot of work to do to fix their reliability. So what's actually causing all these failures? The main thing connecting Mercedes engine problems is surprisingly consistent. Bearing failures, thermal management issues, and quality control problems. But what exactly is a bearing failure? Think of bearings as tiny metal cushions inside the engine that help moving parts spin smoothly without grinding against each other. When a bearing fails, it's like your bike chain breaking. Suddenly all that smooth movement turns into metal scraping against metal. This can happen when there's not enough oil, the oil gets dirty, or the engine gets pushed too hard. Once a bearing breaks, it can make loud knocking sounds and even destroy the whole engine. For Mercedes, bearing failures keep popping up across different years and different engines. In 2016, Hamilton's Malaysia retirement was caused by a big end bearing failure. In 2024, his Australia retirement was another bottom end failure. These aren't exotic F1 specific problems. They're basic engine reliability issues that engineers solved decades ago. Thermal management is another recurring theme. Modern F1 engines run incredibly hot, and managing that heat is crucial for reliability. Mercedes has admitted to having unusual noises in their engines that they don't fully understand, often related to temperature and pressure issues. When you're pushing the boundaries of what's physically possible, sometimes things get too hot to handle, literally. But perhaps the most troubling pattern is quality control. Multiple failures have been traced back to manufacturing issues rather than design problems. That suggests Mercedes isn't just struggling with the complexity of modern engines. They're struggling with basic quality control in their production process. The reality is that modern hybrid F1 engines are incredibly complex machines. They're part internal combustion engine, part electric motor, part computer, and they have to work perfectly while being pushed to their absolute limits. Add in cost-cutting pressures and tight manufacturing schedules, and you have a recipe for reliability problems. Here's where we stand today. Mercedes is still one of the top teams in Formula 1, but they're fighting a reliability demon that just won't die. They've been promising fixes for years, bringing in new engine modes, conservative settings, and redesigned components. Yet, the problems persist. The irony is painful. This is the same Mercedes that dominated F1 from 2014 to 2020, winning Constructors' Championship with engines that barely broke down. Now, they're in 2025. Still competitive enough to win races, but never quite sure if their engines will make it to the finish line. Toto Wolff remains optimistic, as team bosses always do, insisting they understand the problems better now. But actions speak louder than words, and the action is still engines failing when they shouldn't. Mercedes has changed everything about their cars: suspension, layout, driver position, gearboxes. Yet, somehow the fundamental issues remain. The big question isn't whether Mercedes can build fast engines. They've proven they can do that. The question is whether they can build reliable ones again. Their reputation was built on engineering excellence and bulletproof reliability. Right now, they're known more for dramatic failures and frustrated drivers. So can Mercedes return to their reliability reputation of the past? It's still unclear, but one thing is for certain. Until they solve these persistent engine problems, they'll always be fighting with one hand tied behind their back.